Remember we talked about the Dai Mai, and the Dai Mai, it's one of the 8 extraordinary channels, and that's one additional channel system in the body. And I made the suggestion that maybe part of why you have that ever expanding waist could be about the Dai Mai. So why did I think it was about the Dai Mai? Well, first we talked about where that Dai Mai was located, right? And it's located right around your abdomen. It's the only channel that goes horizontally instead of vertically. So that goes right around the abdomen, and you notice on most people that Dai Mai, the stomach falls over the Dai Mai. So the Dai Mai really is that cutoff point, and it seems like there's all this energy that's kind of stuck in your stomach where that right on top of that Dai Mai. Okay, so that was kind of what we were talking about last time. And so now what we're going to go into do is talk about, how could that be? Because one of the things that, from a Chinese medical perspective, one of the things is that the 8 extraordinaries help deal with our spiritual self, our genetic inheritance, what we brought into this life to learn, and our experiences with this life. And when those experiences become overwhelming, how we slowly start to incorporate them into our spirit, into our perspective, and we end up experiencing them every day of our lives. We pass them on to our children. And if you believe in reincarnation, when you get to the point where you're reincorporating them into one of your 8 extraordinaries, that means you get the bonus of being able to try and work through it again in your next life. Okay, so there it is. These 8 extraordinaries, they help us deal with our emotional experiences in this world. Let's talk a little bit about how that happens. And remember in the last episode, we talked about overeating and how overeating impacts our body. And over time, then it starts impacting our health and changing our health. We get high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and, we just start breaking down. Well, let's talk about stagnation because, stagnation, it's like bloating. So for those of you who have experienced bloating, you know how it feels like your abdomen is just blowing up and super uncomfortable. And for some of us, bloating doesn't even have to be a big meal. It can just be you breathed food and all of a sudden you get bloating. So, bloating can happen for a lot of different reasons. So if after you eat, your stomach feels like it's expanded and it's pulling on you, there's a lot of reasons why that could be happening. So let's first look at how the West and Western medicine looks at it, and then let's add in, a touch of Chinese medicine flair, okay? So in Western medicine, bloating happens because you're not digesting your food. Okay, that makes sense. And it can happen because you ate something that you're sensitive to. And, when you're sensitive to something, that just means you don't have the resources right now to break down the food. That's reasonable because our foods, today, they're not so healthy. So we end up eating all these foods that don't have the resources that our body needs to rebuild itself or to help break down everything that it needs to. So what ends up happening is that you're not breaking down the food, and the food just slows down, stays there, it doesn't digest, and that causes it to, what they say, ferment in the gut. And when it ferments in the gut, it creates gas and bloating and distension and that feeling of being really uncomfortable. Okay, so let's add in a touch of Chinese medicine flavor to this. And so let's say you just ate something. Well, in Chinese medicine, your gut is actually trying to process what you ate. And your body, what it's doing is it's expending energy, and it has to expend energy in order to break down food. And when it's expending energy to break down food, it's creating heat. Now, if it could break down the food, that food would move through your digestive tract. But when you're experiencing stagnation, bloating, what ends up happening is your body, it can't break down that food. So that food slows down. Sometimes it even gets stuck in the tract wherever it's at, and it doesn't move out of your digestive tract. So your body ends up calling out more resources to try and break it down. And a byproduct of that digestion is heat. And we know from science that any type of combustion, it creates heat. And you have all these resources coming in to try and break down this food. You just don't have the right resources, and it's creating heat. And none of that heat is being removed. So it's just staying where it's at. And so then you have bloating. And it's like blowing up a balloon. You blow up all this air into it, and it gets trapped in the balloon because there's no outlets. And there's only one outlet, right? Because you've been eating. The one outlet you have goes back up your esophagus to your throat, into your mouth. And that's where all that heat starts going. So you start getting those sensations of heartburn. You get those heartburn in your chest. You get them in the back of your throat. And that is that energy, all that heat trying to come up and find a way out. So in Chinese medicine, that's what they kind of think is happening when you're looking at bloating. So if we look at this, and let's add in the example that we were talking about in part 1 with the Dai Mai. So what we're seeing here is that Dai Mai, it is stopping energy from flowing up and down your body, right around the middle. Well, what ends up happening when you have this food backing up on top of that, then you see your body's going to start breaking down over time, and you start having the stomach issues, you start having the heartburn, you start having all your digestive issues. So if we look at physical stagnation in Chinese medicine, it's going to be heat from the digestion that has no place to go. It can't go any place because it's creating too much heat to pass through. So, okay, if that makes sense, if your body, from just trying to break down foods and digestion, if your body can break down oh, sorry to hear that. Shelley said this happened to her last night from Red Robin. What were you doing eating at Red Robin in the first place? I love their French fries there, and I love their hamburgers, but man, I can't do that too often because, let's be real, I would be in the exact same place that you were. So, okay. So that's what happens with when we look at a real physical expression like food. But guess what? The same thing's going to happen with your emotions. So your emotions can create this energetic stagnation in different parts of your body. And the longer it goes on, the more severe the stagnation. So when we were talking about emotions, when we were talking about the Dai Mai, when we were talking about emotions, when we were talking about the Dai Mai, one of the things that the Dai Mai deals with is trauma. So trauma that has been long-term, that has been excessive, that has been overwhelming. So just like overeating, we start pushing all these emotions down into the Dai Mai. Now, when they get to the Dai Mai, what they get to do is they get to color your perception of the world. They get to impact how you raise your children. You're going to share that perception of the world with your children, and you get the opportunity to take them into your next life. So the Dai Mai deals with emotional overload, and it deals with trauma. And now, just like overeating, when you get too much of it, what happens with overeating? Everything stops in your stomach. Well, when you push too many emotions into your Dai Mai, everything stops in the Dai Mai. The Dai Mai goes around the waist. Your belly hangs right over the Dai Mai. If you have the bonus opportunity to experience being overweight. You know that your belly likes to hang over this one specific spot around your abdomen. That's the Dai Mai. Think about how stressed out we are right now. Think about everything that's going on. People are experiencing stress from the pandemic. They're experiencing stress from inflation. They're experiencing stress from wondering if they're able to survive today. Now, those are just today's stressors. And then they have all the stressors that they brought from their past, like their childhood traumas or work traumas or whatever it is. All these traumas, it's overwhelming for everybody to deal with today. And more people today are really noticing an issue with anxiety or with stress or frustration or anger. And that emotion, if we can't process it, it gets to get pushed down into the Dai Mai, where it will get to color our perception. It will get to impact our interaction with our kids, and it will get to go with us into our next life, if you believe in reincarnation. So that is the concept of how it would get stuck in the Dai Mai. And when it gets stuck in the Dai Mai, when those emotions get stuck in the Dai Mai, one of the things that happens is people get that expanding bloating. You know, when you like tap on your stomach and it's like hitting a drum? That's kind of like that kind of emotional stagnation, bloating happening in your digestive area. So let's say that's one way that you can experience that ever expanding gut. I mean, overeating can get you there without having the emotional baggage with it. But one of the things that happens with this Dai Mai is when it blocks that gut. What it does is it traps the food in there. And in Chinese medicine, they say when energy doesn't move over a long period of time, it creates phlegm. And, you know, on my YouTube channel, you saw that there's a number of episodes on phlegm and what it is in the body and how it looks. Well, you know, they think that phlegm's the most difficult thing to get rid of in your body. And they also think it is the cause of all the bad diseases, like cancers. So when the Dai Mai gets blocked and it can't open, it slows that food down and it starts creating all this phlegm in your body. And people start noticing that, you know, they're always congested, their throat's always hoarse or scratchy, they've got sleep in their eyes or their ears are getting stuffed up. They just notice these thick fluids just all over their body. A lot of it starts in the abdomen. So one of the ways that blocks in the Dai Mai help us gain weight is that it creates phlegm. Phlegm, you can't just go about losing weight to get rid of it because it actually takes a little bit more effort. You got to put a conscious effort into trying to get rid of phlegm. And because it's not just fat cells anymore. It's not like, oh, I stored fat cells and I've got to get rid of my fat cells. It's like I stored fat cells and then I squished them in with styrofoam to make sure that they stay in place. And you've got to get rid of the styrofoam first before you can get rid of that expanding belly. Okay, so why can food help with this? So when we're talking about this, you know, there's a lot of reasons why we have an expanding belly. So overeating, phlegm, emotional trauma. And let's say you've tried a diet and right after your diet, you lost all your weight and right after your diet, you just blew up again. Well, then that wasn't really about weight. We've got to look at phlegm and we've got to look at emotions. And so let's say we start looking at phlegm and we start addressing phlegm. Well, why you can help address your trauma by your eating is if you can get rid of the phlegm, you are going to allow your Dai Mai and your 8 extraordinaries to start processing this stuff again. So let's think about this. You know, if you think about your body, let's say that it's it's running at 100%. And at 100%, it's 100 units. And so you go out and you eat, and let's say you're in good health. And so you're good with your eating, you're eating healthy, you're active during the day, and you're sleeping at night, and your emotions are pretty balanced. So you've got these 100 units, and let's say you're using all 100 units to do that. So you're using like 50 units to do your digestion and a metabolism. You're doing 20, 30 units to do your daily activities. You're doing another 20 units to process your emotions. There's 100. So what we do, though, is we go out and we overeat. And so instead of the 50 units to process our foods, we are using 70 units or 80 units. And you know what makes that even tougher is because of all the chemicals that they've put into our foods, or the GMOs, or all these issues with how we've processed foods for eating. It actually takes a lot more effort for us to digest and break down foods, right? So, let's say instead of the 50 units, you're using 80 units. And then to do your daily activities, you still need 30 units. Well, between 80 and 30, that's 110. You're already using more energy than you have. So what's going to happen? Your daily activities are going to get shunted. It's going to keep on trying to process foods, and then your emotions don't get any energy. So why I say that changing your eating habits, just even starting out with clean eating foods that are as unprocessed or as whole as possible, for your situation and for your location, because you're going to take down that amount of energy that you're using to process foods. And today, we use almost all our energy in processing foods, and it's amazing. The minute you can start eliminating all the processed and junk foods out of your diet, all of a sudden you got all this energy and you're starting to drop weight. We use a lot of energy with our food supply chain just because of all the things that are in it. So for me, what I found is that if you can even just start to pick more whole and unprocessed foods, you are going to reduce the amount of energy that you need to process and use and digest your foods. And if you reduce the footprint of digestion, that means that you've left yourself more energy for your daily activities and for your emotions, because both of those are going to need a chunk of your energy also. And if you can leave a chunk for each of those, that means that you can process things better through the Dai Mai, and you can start processing through all those emotions that have been stuck in there and trapped, and that are causing you to blow up around your abdomen. And the key reasons that that part of this is about your emotions is those diets that you do, and then right afterwards you stop your diet and you blow up again, or the amount of phlegm. Phlegm can be just because you're overeating, but a lot of times there's an emotional component to it also. So that's some thoughts on the Dai Mai. That's some thoughts on why it works the way it does. And hopefully that helps give you some ideas that, don't get discouraged. If you're saying, I don't like my weight where it is right now. It's hard for me to move around. It's hard for me to do everything every day. It's hard for me to interact with people. Oh, I can't fit into my clothes. Don't get discouraged about that. Think instead about your overall health and what you're trying to accomplish with your health, and understand that, it took our whole life to get to where we are right now. And it's going to take us a little bit of time to figure out what we need to do to unravel everything that's happened in our life so that we can have the health that we want. And one of the key ways to go about getting the health that you want is starting with something as easy as your food. So I'm really, really strongly supporting, hey, let's try doing more whole foods as much as we can. And then after that, let's start looking at the healing properties of foods. Let's look at what foods help remove phlegm from our body. And then when we get through those two things, then maybe what you want to do is look and find somebody who deals with internal alchemy and start unraveling those emotions that have been getting trapped in your body, that color the way you think, that impact everything that you're doing in this world. Okay, so I don't know. Well, thanks for that, Shelley. Hey, do you guys have any questions? So curious, Shelley, you have any questions? Oh yeah, victim to what they feed us. Isn't that tragic? It almost feels that way, doesn't it? So yeah, Shelley's saying, wow, it seems like our food system, it's almost like we're a victim to what they feed us. And I can tell you, I feel that pain, because I can tell you, trying to get off of the corporate food chain and the processed foods, that was like the worst experience of my life. It was the worst detox that I've gone through, and I'm not through it completely, but I can tell you, when I first started out, it was really brutal. Okay, just seeing if there's any other questions, because I don't really have anything that I wanted to add to this week. Okay, then, you guys, stay healthy, stay safe, and until next time, I'll catch you on the other side.